Mike Tyson is back in training. In a recent interview with the rapper T.I., he said that he's considering having some exhibition bouts for charity. Now, many of you will have heard Mike Tyson over the past couple years say that he doesn't do any boxing training at all anymore. He said that on numerous occasions. And his reason for this is that he says once he gets into training mode, he starts to feel like his old self. And in his own words, again, I'm paraphrasing, his old self when he was a young man fighting, he was a megalomaniac. George Foreman used to say something similar about how he felt when he got below a certain weight, because George Foreman came back 10 years after he retired when he lost to Jimmy Young, retired for 10 years, came back, and he was a lot heavier. And the boxing press said, George, why don't you get back down somewhere close to your old fighting weight like you were in the 70s? And George said, no, as soon as I start getting close to that weight, I start feeling the same as I did when I was a young guy. And I don't want to be that guy anymore. So what we're talking about there is body chemistry, brain chemistry. When you actually lose fat, and look, not everybody's the same, but I have certainly experienced this throughout my life, is when I start getting in shape and all the fat comes off, start getting shredded, I feel different. My testosterone levels are higher. I feel more aggressive. I feel more hyperactive. I talk louder. And for some people, this can be extreme. And Mike Tyson's one of those people. So this is the reason why he hasn't been doing any boxing training for a long time. But under the current situation, where Tyson is mainly confined to the house over the past however many weeks now, I think that that is how the boxing bug has got back in him. Because Mike Tyson is a guy who's always had a lot going on in his life. From when he was a young kid, having to battle bullies and stuff like that in Brooklyn. He was born in Bed-Stuy and later on moved to Brownsville. And he had a real rough time in Brownsville. Eventually turned into a criminal himself. And again, his life was chaotic. Running around, committing crimes, getting arrested, going to prison, all this kind of stuff. Then, of course, meeting Bobby Stewart in the Tryon School for Boys, being introduced to Customado, being trained with Teddy Atlas, and even up there in the Catskills, Mike Tyson's life was still very, very chaotic and always very busy. That's how his life was. Then, of course, he had success as an amateur, went on to become youngest heavyweight champion of the world, and the fame and fortune that came with that. And that's where it really turned into a roller coaster ride. Everybody wanted a piece of Mike Tyson. And even when he went into prison, he didn't have the experience of a normal prisoner. He was a celebrity prisoner. He had certain privileges in prison which other prisoners didn't have, or not many other prisoners had. I won't get into those. If you've read Mike Tyson's book, you know what I'm talking about, or heard some of his interviews. And obviously after his boxing career was over, he then went into movies, entertainment. Eventually he started doing his own stage show. He started doing public speaking engagements. And now, of course, he's got his podcast. So he's always had a very active life in terms of, social life and what have you. But all of a sudden it comes to a juddering halt under the current situation we're experiencing in the world. And again, I think that's why Mike Tyson has started to get itchy feet. He needs to channel his energy if he can't go out there and do the usual things that he does because of the current situation. He has to channel his energy somehow. And therefore, he started channeling it into training. That's how he's gotten over the boredom and, what have you. Now, the isolation won't bother somebody like Mike Tyson, or let me not say it won't bother him. I'm sure it bothers him, but he will be able to cope better than a lot of people because, of course, he's been in the penitentiary many, many times. Obviously as a youngster, he was in juvenile prisons and stuff like that. And as an adult, he's been to the penitentiary a couple times. So, he'll be able to cope. He'll have certain coping mechanisms. And I think that's to throw himself into his training, because that's what he did in the penitentiary. He threw himself into training. When Mike Tyson came out of prison in 1995, that is the most ripped and shredded he ever was at any other time in his adult life. You look at Mike Tyson when he fought Peter McNeely, he was absolutely chiseled. And Tyson was always a guy who was in shape, but he was really chiseled then. So, that's his coping mechanism. And some people can just sit around and pontificate and philosophize and all that kind of stuff. Like those Chinese, you see in them Chinese movies, those hermits who live up in the mountain and they don't have visitors for like years and years, and they're just perfecting their soul and stuff like that, living extremely long lives. They're very introspective people, very spiritual people. A lot of, probably most people, I would say, are not very introspective. And people who are not introspective are actually afraid of their own subconscious. Like, for example, there are certain people, as soon as they wake up in the morning, if they're in the house alone, they have to put music on. They have to put a radio on. They have to call somebody. They can't be alone, even for a whole day, in silence. There has to be some noise. And the reason they're doing this is because they're trying to distract from what's going on inside their own heads. A lot of people are like this, right? People personally are going to be, maybe some of you listening to this right now are like this. So a lot of people are afraid of what's in their own heads, and they'll do anything to distract from thinking inwardly, being introspective. So whatever the coping mechanism people have, Mike Tyson's coping mechanism is to throw himself into his training. And he was obviously very successful with that. So we're seeing it again here. Will that result in Mike Tyson going off the rails again? I hope not, particularly at his age. But you can expect Mike Tyson to have a very different demeanor the next time you see him. He won't be this chilled Mike who's giggling and talking about toads and all this kind of business. Some of the old Mike is going to be back when you see him next time. Mike Tyson is, and that's if he continues this training, Mike Tyson is in his 50s. And so when I heard this story about him being open to doing exhibition bouts for charity, I thought about John Fury, Tyson Fury's dad, because he has proclaimed himself to be the best 50-odd-year-old man in the world. Okay? As in the best at fighting. This is what he said out of his own mouth. Well, and he's talked about how he would like to fight and stuff like this. And he's apparently fighting some guy who was a bouncer and a friend of Lenny McLean's and all this kind of business for charity. Well, if he really wants a challenge, Mike Tyson is there for him. And I'm serious, because John Fury called out Lennox Lewis a couple years back. And he said he'd fight Lennox Lewis in a heartbeat, no holds barred and all this kind of business. Well, Mike Tyson is right there. He's a 50-something-year-old man. So Mike Tyson versus John Fury, anyone? Look, I'm not saying that that's a fight that we should be pushing for. But since John Fury is itching for some competition and believes himself to be the best guy of his age group in the world, then there you go. The guy you named your son after, Mike Tyson, he's coming back.
Because we're real men, hard men, proper men what's been brought up the hard way, fetched up with nothing given to us, didn't want nothing from them, did 15-year jail for a fight.
One thing I do have to mention is that Jeff Fennick, who trained Mike Tyson at the very, very end of his career, recently said that if he had Mike Tyson and trained him for something like 6 or 7 weeks, he could knock out Deontay Wilder in one round. Now, Fennick is a very enthusiastic individual, always was Jeff Fennick. And no disrespect to the guy, but I always felt like he was a little silly with the kind of stuff that he used to say and what have you. Always felt like he was a bit, somebody who is impulsive and emotional and stuff like that. And for him to say that he could knock Wilder out in a round, maybe that's a get-rich-quick scheme for Jeff Fennick and Mike Tyson. I don't know. I mean, Mike Tyson should still have a decent amount of money. Jeff Fennick, I don't know what happened to his prize money from his fighting days, but maybe it's just a way for them to get some money together. How ambitious could Mike Tyson be at this particular age? What is he, 55, 56 or something like that? He would almost certainly never get licensed to face a Deontay Wilder. From what I've seen online, there isn't that many Mike Tyson fans saying that, yeah, he could beat Wilder right now. There might be a few out there, but not many. Because most Mike Tyson fans will understand that the last time Tyson fought, however many years ago it was, what was it, 15 years ago or something? The last time Mike Tyson fought, he got stopped by Kevin McBride. So if you got stopped by Kevin McBride 15 years ago, you're not going to beat Deontay Wilder now. That's just not happening. And prior to getting stopped by McBride, of course, he was stopped by Danny Williams. So yeah, 15 years ago, you stopped by McBride. You come back at the age of 55, 56 to fight Wilder. Yeah, you're definitely not knocking him out in one round. That's not happening in a million years. Mike Tyson, athletically, was always very gifted. The hand speed, the punching power, the hand-eye coordination, all that kind of stuff. The balance, etc. He threw punches with very, very good form. He'll still have some semblance of that. So if Mike Tyson gets in shape right now, starts hitting pads in the bag, it may look a bit impressive, okay? But there's a very, very big difference between hitting a bag and hitting pads and getting in there and actually having a fight. Because when you get in there and have a fight, that's when reflexes come into play. That's when you have to be able to anticipate what your opponent is doing, react, which means either getting out of the way or throwing a punch to counter. Yeah, or seeing an opening and beating the opponent to the punch. This is where reflexes come into play. And when you are as old as Mike Tyson is in his mid-50s, the reflexes are just not the same. So coming back and doing exhibitions, I think against people of his age range, or people who are maybe journeymen that are not very good. Because look, if you put Mike Tyson in there right now against a tough, active journeyman, there's a good chance he's going to lose. A very good chance. In fact, he probably will lose. Mike Tyson knows how difficult it is to get himself into the kind of condition needed to be competitive against anybody but a complete cream puff. He knows. I mean, I remember interviews with Mike Tyson back in the days where he said, I'm either as good as the best of them or as bad as the worst. On my best day, I could beat anybody in history. On my worst day, you could beat me. And he was talking to the interviewer, the guy interviewing him. Mike Tyson's an all or nothing kind of guy. And when he goes for it, I mean, he's been talking about some of the training that he's been doing over the past few weeks. And it sounds like the kind of training which people 10, 15, 20 years younger would struggle to do. A lot of people. And I'm not talking about athletes. Athletes are going to be able to do it. You know, I mean, I'm including professional boxers in that. But just the average Joe, they would struggle to do the kind of things that Mike Tyson says he's doing right now at the age of, 50 odd. So he's still going to have a certain level of physicality about him. But exhibition bouts, I mean, would they be competitive bouts? Or would it just be literally him messing around in the ring with one of his former sparring partners? He used to have a sparring partner called Nate Tubbs, who was a real big guy. And he had another sparring partner called Corey Sanders, not the South African Corey Sanders. This was an American Corey Sanders. And his name was spelt Corey, actually, Corey, rather than Corey, as in Corey Sanders from South Africa, which was Corrie. But they were real big guys who weren't very good. They were almost like giant heavy bags for Mike Tyson. In fact, he fought an exhibition with, I think, was it Nate Tubbs? He had that exhibition with. Will I watch Mike Tyson in an exhibition bout? Yeah, I'll probably watch, because I was always a big fan of Mike Tyson, the fighter. You know, I loved watching him. I thought he was the most exciting heavyweight in history. His style and the fact that with Mike Tyson fights, there was no feeling out process. He would just go straight for the jugular from the opening bell. And that's what people want at the end of the day. You know, when you're talking to casuals, people who don't normally watch boxing, they tend to get very, very restless, a lot of them, when there's nothing going on in a fight early doors, when the feeling out process is taking place. They get very, very restless about that. They want to see people swinging from the opening bell. And that's what Mike Tyson used to bring. That's why Mike Tyson has probably more casual fans in his fan base than maybe any other boxer in history, because of the fact that the casuals want a guy who's just going to rush out and throw bombs immediately. They're not into all the trickery and messing about. You see, the casuals may not understand. Some of them think they're boxing scientists, but the average Mike Tyson casual, when they watch him fight, they don't really see the science behind what he's doing, at least not at first. They just see a guy rushing out there hitting people. They don't really understand the technique, the timing, the drills that Mike Tyson had to go through to be able to fight like that. And also not realizing how calm Mike Tyson is when he fights and how elusive he was on the front foot. Because Tyson wasn't a guy. See, I've seen over the years a lot of fighters, a lot of young kids in the gym, professionals, even amateurs, who clearly are massively influenced by Mike Tyson. And when they go in the ring, it's almost like they're in a rage, you know, and their head's all over the place and they're trying to destroy the opponent. Mike Tyson was very calm when he was fighting. That's what you don't understand. You think he's in a rage because you look at his highlight clips where he's throwing these incredible combinations, but Mike Tyson was calm in the ring. Yeah, and he'll tell you that himself. I mean, an example of what I'm talking about is like James Wilson. Whenever I see James Wilson, calls himself the Beast, hitting the pads, he's throwing everything into every punch. There's no smoothness to it. There's no grace to it. He's not calm. His mind is in a frenzy when he's throwing these combinations on the pads and hitting the bag. Mike Tyson would control his aggression. So for the most part, when he's in the ring, he's very, very calm. And then he's able to explode fast with fast combinations. And then he brings himself back down calm again for the next move. Yeah, if it didn't get the desired effect, he brings himself back down calm again, moves his head, stays calm. He's very focused. This is how Mike Tyson was. He wasn't this guy who was just in a mad frenzy. It looked frenzied at times because of the fact that Mike Tyson was so fast. Naturally, he was a fast guy. So if he's throwing his punches and moving his head 3-4 times faster than the other guy, it can look as though he's in a rage. But for the most part, he actually wasn't in a rage. The times when Mike Tyson was in a rage in the ring are in fights where he ended up either losing or being close to losing, like in the Holyfield rematch, the Francois Botha fight, for example. Those are instances where Mike Tyson was in a rage. You could say the Lou Savarese fight, but Mike Tyson was actually, how can I put this without YouTube and their algorithm demonetizing, but he was actually on something. Mike Tyson admitted to being on something in the Lou Savarese fight. And I'm talking about something recreational. He was on. And he managed to evade being caught for that by using a certain device. And he's spoken about this publicly. This is no rumor or anything like that. He's spoken about this in interviews. He used a certain device to evade being caught for being on something, a recreational substance, which makes you hyper in the Lou Savarese fight. And there may have been other fights as well where Mike Tyson was on the very, very same thing. But yeah, those are my thoughts, my musings on Mike Tyson considering coming back to have some exhibition bouts. I'd like to hear from you guys in terms of whether you think it's a good idea, whether you think he'll start going off the rails again? When he feels like his old self? Will he start having the megalomania creep up on him once more? And who would you like to see him fight? Look, some people will be happy to see Mike Tyson back in the ring, even at 50 odd years of age. But who would be his exhibition opponent? John Fury? Would it be one of his old opponents from back in the days? One of his old sparring partners? Will it be a journeyman who's still hanging around at the moment? Let me know, people. It's happening. I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.